Glacier National Park is often called the crown of the continent, but it's losing its signature feature, its glaciers.
Well, a new study released by the U.S. Geological Survey shows that over the past 50 years, 39 of the park's glaciers have actually shrunk dramatically. Some say as much as 85%. And now there's concern that they could disappear in our lifetime.
Daniel Faygre is the lead scientist on that study from the U.S. Geological Survey. He joins us now from West Glacier, Montana. Oh, what an assignment today for you out there, right? So first explain, Dan, in more detail what the study actually found, because this is disturbing.
Well, basically, this study added to the data that we've been collecting for quite some time, and it suggests that the inexorable process of these glaciers melting away is continuing. We simply have more and better data because we have new satellite imagery that gives us an unprecedented look at the details of this. But the storyline is basically not changed.
So how much of this would you say is natural, and how much of it is actually caused by human activity?
Well, there are still natural variations that continually go and create some waxing and waning of the glaciers, but the process of continually getting warmer has to be attributed to humans.
And that's, that's often what we talk about when we talk about the Earth heating up and some of these glaciers in other parts of the world melting. What does the future look like at Glacier National Park? At this rate, could these glaciers disappear forever? It seems crazy to think about, but it's also a possibility with the science.
That's correct. It's already too warm to sustain these small glaciers. It's just a matter of how long it takes them to melt. They're going at unsustainable rates. And even if we had some stabilization in the climate, it wouldn't do them any good. We actually would have to have it get cooler here to preserve these glaciers or to reverse their demise. So at this stage, we will see the glaciers that have been here for 7,000 years go away within our lifetime.
And is there anything, Dan, that can be done to slow it down or try and even reverse the trend?
Not without reversing the global trend in temperature increases. Local solutions aren't really very effective. There have been a couple attempts to save individual glaciers, but it's cost prohibitive, and many of our glaciers in Glacier National Park are back in the wilderness, and so you wouldn't be able to apply any of those solutions.
So I was reading that there were 150 glaciers at one point. There's now 40. As you said, these could totally disappear in your lifetime. How soon, I guess personal question here, how soon should I be getting out to the park to see what's left?
Well, you have a little while. Some of our larger glaciers are going to take a while to melt, so you don't have to rush to make a reservation. On the other hand, we do have people coming to the park with their children to show them the glaciers before they're gone.
Oh, get on it, sister.
I know, tough to even think about. Dan Faygre, thank you so much from the U.S. Geological Survey. We really appreciate you being with us.
You're very welcome.
La, la, la. This is real life.
Things are messed up, man.
Wow, 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 wow. County 001.
This is messed up, man.
Wow.
This is messed up.
Muti kwa ndani. Eh? Mwanamke. Nani mwanamke huyo? Nani mwanamke? Mungu amsaidie. Satoke, atoke pale. Atoke. Mwanamke. Abakile akitoka tu kidogo anaenda. Bakia pale. Bakilia pale. Ubakie ndio. Bakia pale. Ile simu iko pale. Pesa Yesu kwa pale. Abakilie pale. Mimi najua. Hange basi wakati ngola yote huko. Sanaye mai kwa mbero kule niko na katia kule. Ile kapenda pige tu ngope kwa tundia tena tena. Naye kosha kwa kule lesho na mai kumbele naye akiendelea. Mbona anza kuyo wapi bado baadhi. Ndio anaenda
Junda Estate, Mombasa. Houses submerged, residents with nowhere to go. Not too far from here, one person died after being washed away by floods, while 2 others died in Mikindani following mudslides in the area.
Kwamba tufanye nini? Kwanza tuwashukuru Mungu, haya maji sasa yamepungua. Jana usiku haya maji ilikuwa imeziba paka nyumba, tuoni mabati.
Unajua mtu haizi kuambiwa asijenge mahali alipozaliwa. Wengi wao hapa ni mahali walipozaliwa, mtu amejikuta amezaliwa hapo.
Governor Hassan Joho visited families of the 6 people who died on Monday, promising to take stern action against those who had illegally constructed along waterways. But hundreds of residents will have to seek shelter elsewhere tonight with their houses swallowed up by water. The most affected areas include Kalahari, Runyu, Mwamlai, Jomvu, Miritini and Mwandoni.
Mvua inaendelea, hatuwezi kungoja hasara. So if it takes us to demolish some walls, that will be done.
In Kwale County, Marere Bridge along the Kinango-Lungalunga Road was washed away by flash floods. The Kenya National Highways Authority, KENHA, says that Ramisi, Perani and Kanana bridges along the Likoni-Lungalunga Road were also overtopped by water. and more than 20 houses in Darling village in Diani were submerged following the ongoing heavy downpour.
Amepitia kwa milango mpaka kwa madirisha kwa sababu imepita kiasi kubwa sana.
Hatuwezi kwenda sehemu zingine za Mwache kule, hatuwezi kwenda Mwangulu, hatuwezi kwenda sehemu hata kufika Vanga kwa sababu ya mafuriko.
Those who attempted to cross the surging waters found themselves in trouble. This man only survived after clinging onto a tree. To avoid a similar scene, boats were deployed to some estates in Mombasa. All roads leading to this estate in Bombolulu were blocked by water.
Our neighbors have vacated due to this rain. We have a lot of poultry that has died because of this.
Kulikuwa kuko mbaya sana, hata tumelala tu kwa jirani.
You could be mistaken to think that we are in a lake, but this is Bombolulu Estate, a place where residents come in and out as they like usually, but today that is not possible. They have to rely on boats such as this one donated by the county government of Mombasa, and as you can see over the horizon and everywhere here, they have to wait until this boat makes its trips. But how much can it do? It can only take 8 people, or a weight of 850 kilograms. Hundreds of passengers and motorists at the Likoni ferry crossing in Mombasa were today morning and this evening stranded for hours. Kenya Ferry Services Managing Director Bakari Goa says this was caused by high water currents from nearby rivers that countered ocean currents, making it difficult for the ferries to operate. Peter Mongangi, NTV, Mombasa.
روح
Tropical cyclone Donna, now a record breaker. This is the strongest storm in May in the southern hemisphere, with max winds reaching 130 miles per hour. That's a Category 4 equivalent. It is dying out now. It has started to weaken, but still a strong storm. Winds 105 miles per hour. Now it's not giving a direct hit to New Caledonia, which is good news, but still we're looking at some rainfall. So there's a look at the projected path over the next 48 hours, and this will continue to weaken. Now, as far as rainfall goes, we could see an additional few inches, up to 6 inches on southern parts of the island.
Meet the man who saved a house. when the owner of this riverfront home west of Montreal found water pouring through doors and walls last week. She called Mark Kelly. A water and sewer contractor, he installed 13 pumps and built sandbag walls against the surge. He and his son worked 72 hours straight.
Okay, they have a lot of damage to change the carpet and the wall and everything, but it's still there. At least for them, they don't lose everything.
Not far away, other homeowners weren't so lucky. Many of them had to flee when rising waters reached the electrical supply, threatening fire and shock. Across Quebec and in other parts of Canada, thousands of homes are damaged. Just under 2,000 soldiers are helping local rescue and relief efforts.
It's a serious situation, but people should know that every level of government is pulling together here seamlessly to do everything that is necessary to keep Canadians safe.
These are the worst spring floods in generations. Last month was one of the wettest Aprils on record, and it rained more in the first week of May than it usually does in the entire month. But climate scientists say Canada should know by now that in future extreme weather linked to climate change will add to the potential for catastrophes.
We cannot say this one event is definitely due to climate change, but is consistent with climate change. Climate change through global warming is going to continue happening. The likelihood of these odds are just going to be increasing in the future.
This really has been the first day that relief workers and residents of worst affected areas could see a glimmer of hope after more than a week of misery and danger.
With the heavy rains over, most of the rivers around here have crested or are about to, and that means people who live on the island of Montreal and all the way along the St. Lawrence River in Quebec can finally start to assess the damage and look at what's going to be a long and expensive cleanup. Daniel Lack, Al Jazeera, St. Anne de Bellevue, Quebec.
Well, water levels in the Ottawa River are now starting to stabilize, but the problem isn't over yet. Officials say some areas won't return to normal for several weeks, and that means people in nearly 200 communities still have a long road ahead. Joining me now for the latest is CTV's Amanda Klein, who's on the ground in the Ahuntsic-Cartierville area of Montreal. Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning.
Amanda, we can see that there is water all around you, but talk me through sort of the next steps for the people who've been evacuated. What's it going to take for life to return to normal in some parts of Quebec?
Well, in parts that are hardest hit, like Rigaud, for example, the battle is far from over. There are still more than 100 homes that need to be inspected to make sure that they're safe. Hundreds there have been evacuated already from their homes. So this is definitely a battle that's not over. As you can see in this area specifically, the water level has decreased, but now we're starting to see the debris that comes along with the decreasing water level. There's parts of trees here in the street. I saw a shoe earlier before. There's just tons of debris here that's going to take a long time to get rid of. So yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel per se, but still a very long road ahead.
Amanda, a number of people have been forced from their homes either because of the weather or due to a forced evacuation. What kind of assistance is being made available to those people?
Well, the Quebec government brought in more army officials in order to deal with the dangers or potential dangers of a lot of these homes. So almost 2,000 officers are patrolling areas that are hardest hit. Rigaud, de Montagne, there's many areas around Montreal that are having to evacuate. These people are being brought to shelters in some cases. A lot of schools in the Montreal area have been closed in order to accommodate people who need it. But of course, many are staying with family members during this extremely difficult time where essentially in some cases their homes have been completely destroyed.
Well, I was going to ask that next, Amanda, because almost every homeowner has dealt with some form of flooding at some point. But this seems to be on a completely different scope. For those of us who can't imagine, can you give us an idea of just how damaging these floods have been in Quebec?
I think it's important to highlight, especially for the elderly. I spoke with one man yesterday who's 80 years old. He just sold his home. Fortunately, the buyer was understanding, but he spent the last weekend especially getting rid of feet of water in his basement. Now, this is just unheard of for a lot of people. A lot of people's insurance policies do not cover flood damage to this extent. I spoke with one man also that has a full basement that is completely flooded. So a lot of financial stress on these people, but also psychological in terms of when are they going to be able to return back to their homes. It's still unknown.
Well, our thoughts are with everyone in the region. CTV's Amanda Klein, thanks again.
Fox News alert, a wildfire burning through South Georgia today, now threatening to jump the state line into Florida. More than 140,000 acres burned so far, and the fire is only 12% contained. Residents urged to evacuate as about 700 firefighters battle the blaze. Jonathan Seri has more from Georgia. Jonathan?
Yeah, Jenna, this is currently the biggest wildfire in the country, and the U.S. Forest Service's top priority. Now, the thick haze that was covering much of this area yesterday is finally lifted. That's driving up temperatures, which isn't helping firefighters, but it's also allowing aircraft to come in and drop flame-retardant chemicals, helicopters scooping up water from local lakes to dump on the flames. Now, this area is sparsely populated, but that comes as little comfort to residents who live here. Some have chosen to remain in their homes to look after livestock and property.
We are in conditions right now that we're absolutely bone dry, 100% ignition, unpredictable weather. People need to get out when they're asked to get out. Now, you think of the Okefenokee as a swamp, but it's under severe drought conditions, exposing a lot of dry vegetation here. Now, at 6 o'clock tonight, the U.S. Forest Service and other authorities are going to be meeting at Baker County High School to answer questions and address concerns among local residents. Jenna?
Jonathan, thank you.
Well, more heavy artillery being brought in to battle the growing Okefenokee wildfire along the Georgia-Florida state line.
Yeah, residents asked to take evacuation orders very seriously, but as Dave Malkoff discovered, some people are deciding to make a very risky decision.
This is the only way to fight a 144,000-acre and growing wildfire. Helicopter after helicopter coming to the rescue in Georgia's Okefenokee swamp.
That is really something to see. The water spraying you in the face as this dual-rotored Chinook is pulling up water from this country lake. He's on his way to the fire. You can see the big plumes of smoke coming up overhead as another helicopter comes down with its big snorkel trying to get the next run. This is a mandatory evacuation zone, but that does not mean that the residents have left.
Along with dozers from around the nation, there are pickup trucks in this evacuation zone. People who were asked to leave but chose to stay, like Travis Anderson.
I sent my wife and son on. I stayed behind.
I was like, do you want to stay here? Are you sure you want to stay?
My dad and them stayed out there. Some of our neighbors stayed out there, so we went out there and helped them.
Tom Stokesbury from the U.S. Forestry Service says that is a dangerous idea.
Well, it does make the firefighters' job definitely more difficult. Their main job is going to be suppressing that fire. If they have to divert from suppressing that fire to save lives, which we will do, it kind of limits what our resources capabilities are.
Wildfires take advantage of drought. Putting it out completely may take much more water than that chopper can hold.
What they say around here is we need rain with a name.
Like a hurricane or a tropical storm.
A hurricane or a tropical storm to put it out. Yes, so it seems odd to wish for something like that, but that's what it's going to take to combat this fire.
And they're trying to get to those hot spots. They are trying their best, but it is going to take a long time to put an entire 100% perimeter around this. The possibility is this could go till after Halloween. In the Okefenokee, I'm Dave Malkoff, the Weather Channel.
And you know, this fire not the only game in town, but definitely the big one. Over 143,000 acres. In fact, nearly 144,000 acres burned. 12% containment here with this West Mims fire. Look at all the fires, though, across the state of Florida. We have 30 active fires greater than 100 acres. Total acreage over 191,000. Florida's been having all sorts of trouble thanks to the drought, thanks to the very dry conditions. Look at the relative humidity. This is more typical of what we would expect to see in the Southwest. 28% relative humidity right now in Orlando. Winds luckily light. Anytime you get a wind in play, though, makes those fires easy to spread and also easy to get started. Mike?
How's this looking?
Good.
Clear to drop.
Nice. Right there in the corner.
Empty. That, with us in sight, you cleared a left turn over the top.
Yeah, got you set.
I'm staying low.
All right.
Back to hold. Awesome.
All right, thanks, Rick.
Good night, Terry. We'll see you at base.
All right. And Tanker 02, climb is needed outbound the TFR, unrestricted to whatever altitude you need, no factor.
Swathes of north and west India are sweltering under an intense heat wave with temperatures shooting up beyond 40 degrees mark in several places. In the temple town of Varanasi, where the mercury has been forecast to reach around 45 degrees Celsius by the end of the week, very few tourists were seen on the streets. Similar scenes played out in Allahabad, about 120 km away from Varanasi. Few people who ventured out covered their face with a cloth and shielded themselves from sunlight with an umbrella.
The United States has been privileged to lead the Arctic Council at a time when the Arctic region has been facing unprecedented change and challenges. We look forward to working with Finland as they assume the leadership role of this Council. There are still issues of great concern to each of us that we can address, including advancing the welfare and living conditions of those who call the Arctic home, recognizing that each country has a strategic interest in being part of the Arctic's future, and making sure that we continue to be vigilant in protecting the fragile environment. As Arctic shipping continues to increase, the Council took a number of measures designed to ensure that such shipping remains safe and reliable, including the Arctic Ship Traffic Database that will improve our understanding of the ship traffic in the Arctic, including the number and types of vessels in the Arctic, their exact routing, and other important information. In the United States, we are currently reviewing several important policies, including how the Trump administration will approach the issue of climate change. We are appreciative that each of you has an important point of view, and you should know that we are taking the time to understand your concerns. We're not going to rush to make a decision. We're going to work to make the right decision for the United States.
Current trends indicate that species reliant on sea ice for reproduction,
resting, or foraging will experience range reductions. Arctic sea ice is a habitat at risk. Ice-associated amphipods have declined around Svalbard since the 1980s, and it is possible that sea ice algae community structure has changed in the central Arctic. These changes are possible elsewhere, but these species are not covered under existing monitoring programs, so it is hard to say with certainty.
The changes that I've seen in the ecosystem is very much attached to the change in the sea ice, going from the thick multi-year ice to the first-year ice. And I've seen some of these dramatic changes that, for instance, Russian colleagues have seen over longer periods of time that I worked in the Arctic. Things are happening very fast. I don't think most people realize how fast the climate warming is affecting Arctic sea ice and the sea ice ecosystem. I never thought I would see this in my kind of short lifetime as a researcher, but I think I will see an ice-free Arctic Ocean before I'm done with my research career.
Морских млекопитающих, прежде всего для белого медведя, основную угрозу представляет потепление климата и связано с ним изменение в ледовом покрове. Ледовый покров отступает все далее к приполюсные районы, а это глубоководные районы менее благоприятны для добычи основных видов жертв белого медведя. Это накладывает дополнительный стресс на это животное. И, конечно, для ряда других морских млекопитающих, например, для кольчатого нерв, потепление климата и изменение в ледовом покрове также представляет одну из основных угроз. Но помимо этого, конечно, деятельность человека неизбежно будет вести к такому мощному воздействию на популяции морских млекопитающих белого медведя. Это прежде всего, конечно,
Some Arctic breeding seabirds and marine mammals have been observed shifting behaviors. Harp seals in the northwest Atlantic have been having less pups. In the Barents Sea, they have a lower body condition, and also in the Barents, bearded seals are changing what they eat. Belugas in Hudson Bay have been changing the timing of migration in response to temperatures. Reduced ice means ringed seals may have a harder time having and raising pups. Without ringed seals, the polar bear is less able to rebuild energy stores after their own breeding time. Walrus normally rest on ice, directly located over their food, but with ice reductions, they increasingly use coasts to rest. So not only do they have to travel further for food, but they also run the risk of calf mortality from stampede events on shore.
In Svalbard, the archipelago, where I do most of my high Arctic work, we've had dramatic collapses of sea ice. Up until 2005, we had status quo, running research programs as we had for decades. And in 2006, West Coast and North Coast, there was no sea ice. Just suddenly, unpredicted, unprecedented collapse in sea ice. And it really hasn't recovered. So we're seeing profound changes, many of which are quite difficult to document because the traditional tools available to us, like flying surveys at molting to count seals on sea ice, are obviously no longer possible without sea ice. But things are really dramatic. We see massive behavioral changes in ring seals tagged before the sea ice collapse and after the sea ice collapse. We see that they're living in a very, very different world. They still travel to the summer sea ice that they used to occupy, but they have to travel much, much further. They're not doing area-restricted search anymore because it doesn't seem like they find food concentrations the way they did before. They're diving deeper and for longer and resting less, all of which means, of course, it costs much more to get the food that you require, and that will eventually have reproductive consequences and growth consequences for these animals. And you see that kind of phenomenon in many different species right now. So we're quite concerned, very concerned, about the future of all of these ice-affiliated Arctic endemics.